Hello everyone. Welcome to the third episode of The Haunted Show. We're in conversation with Neil De Silva sir. And in this episode, we'll be discussing about various things like his experience and how he writes and what is his process when he writes. So, sir, I was going through your Amazon ID, your Amazon profile, and I just was very keen to know what is the process. Like your books have been published by many great publishers like companies like Penguins, Hachette, and Vishwakarma. So I just wanted to know what is the process,
Hmm.
like what is the process you go, because every writer has its own process, has its own
Correct.
pros and cons when he writes. So what is your thought process
So I have like 12 books published by now.
by now? Correct.
And what people think is that writing horror is a kind of a monotonous one kind of job. It is not.
It is not.
Because horror itself is such a diverse genre and there is so much to explore that I will never run out of stories. Even if I have to write 100 books, I think I'll be able to do it. And I'll also be able to keep every story different from the other. Like when I wrote Maya's New Husband,
Hmm.
I wrote Yakshini, I wrote Pishach. They come under the category of supernatural horror because we are talking about demons, monsters. We are talking about the occult part of it, the mystical part of it. That is supernatural horror. That is a kind of horror that India actually enjoys very much. Then there are my books like The Spirits Talk to Me, Haunted, both with paranormal investigators Sarbajit Mohanty and Jay Alani. And both of these books are about their real life paranormal experiences. So when we talk about paranormal experiences, paranormal is more about ghosts and spirits. Means people who have died and become ghosts. So that's how it is different from supernatural. Supernatural is more about monsters and demons and stuff
Correct.
who are never human. But paranormal is about that. And paranormal is again fascinating because it lends to that answer, like what happens after death. That is what in paranormal we explore.
Correct.
I have written a book called Ringa Ringa Roses, which is about which are stories for children, with children as the
Okay.
main protagonists, but they are horror stories. So
For
that-
children.
Yeah, and that was a very fun book to write because they are more of a fairy tale-ish book. If you see a lot of fairy tales have a horror kind of bent to them. So I tried to go all out and explore it in Ringa Ringa Roses. I have a book coming out with Puffin this year on
Okay.
Halloween. That is Playthings. It is about toys gone crazy. So again, that is for children. It's a horror novel, and it's supposed to be a big release this year at Halloween.
At Halloween.
And one of my favorite books, my own, out of my own, the book that is most dear to me in a way, is The Evil Eye and the Charm. The Evil Eye and the Charm in this book contains stories of the Nimbu Mirchi charm. You must have, you of
Yeah,
course know
of course.
that
Indian-
people
every Indian
hang.
family has that.
Yes, that Nimbu Mirchi kind of totka
Totka.
outside the
घर के
houses
बाहर, गाड़ी
or
के नीचे.
offices, yeah, something. So I was always curious कि ये क्यों होता है? Why is this done? And then my research into it led into knowing certain things, like what is the actual which is the superstitious reason behind it also, and the scientific reason behind it also. So I combined that and I made these 6 stories, which became a kind of a question, like is it all superstition or is there a science attached to it? So yeah, that was a very fun book to write, and yeah. So in this way, I'm just telling you that there is so much to write.
Like that is the process you go through. Like
The process that I go through is I need to have a very strong idea for a book, which we call as a core concept.
correct.
It could come from a legend, it could come from an observation, it could come from something happening in our real life.
Legend.
Legends, I'll come to that. So once I have that core idea, then I need my characters. And with that, I start spinning my yarns.
Okay, so when you go when you go through your research and all those things, your uh, material and all those things. So while going through these process, have you ever had any haunting or experience like bone chilling experience?
Yeah, more than bone chilling. The thing is, research for writing a horror novel itself. I mean, I can write a novel about that, about how I researched for my horror novel. There are so many things that happen during the research part of it, because what is essentially research? It is getting into the depth of the matter,
The
the
matter,
subject
correct.
matter, right? So, like I have written a book called Maya's New Husband, which is my debut novel. So that book, in fact, it did very well. People know me most for that book even today. The core element of that book was the Aghori culture. So that is the entire subject matter of the book, what it is. I'll not give any spoilers because, of course. So the Aghori culture, it has always fascinated me right from, the time I watched a serial on Doordarshan. I think it was somewhere back in the late 90s. The name of the serial itself was Aghori, and there was this one very scary looking kind of Aghori character in the show who was the protagonist. His name was Baba Shandilyanath in the show. And that show I used to watch, and it would scare the heebie jeebies out of me, like what it is. So I was interested to know whether Aghoris are really this scary, or is there a kind of hidden truth to it, something that we don't know.
Correct.
So when Maya's New Husband happened, when the outline came, I went into a deeper research into what the Aghoris were about. And I found out a lot of things that are commonly known,
Right.
like they are devotees of Lord Shiva, they are mystical sadhus, they live on the mostly on the banks of the Ganga where the cremations are done. So they live on cremation grounds. They wear clothes that have also discarded from the human bodies. They also use utensils such as skulls and bones, so this is all intriguing. When I tried to understand why so, then I came across one belief that the Aghoris have, and that belief is that anything that is created by nature is divine, is holy, which includes human flesh. And therefore, this should not go to waste just like that. And hence, they try to assimilate it within their bodies so that they can get the energy of that creation, divine creation, which includes human flesh, and also they are more in tune with nature. They are more in tune with both the bright and the dark side of nature. So Aghoris are kind of this chasm between the two ends, the two extreme ends. So when I came to know of this, all these experiences, I had to put them in a book, because a lot of people still have a wrong notion of what Aghoris are. They are of course sadhus, and some of them are very powerful in the supernatural sense.
As in?
Some of them claim to see all the three timelines: the past, the present, and the future
Future.
as well. Yes. Some of them claim to have mystical healing powers. So there are lots of things, legends around them, which is why Maya's New Husband is more of a kind of book where I'm talking about what is the true side of them, what is their belief. I'm not passing any judgments, I'm not making any kind of conclusion, but I'm just saying that this is their side, this is the other side, and whatever you're doing. So that is how my research lent me to writing Maya's New Husband. Another book that I'll also talk to you about, because here the research was again quite intense. And that is my other book that is quite known. It is Yakshini.
Yakshini.
Now, Yakshini, the story of Yakshini goes something like this, if I say it in a nutshell. Again, no spoilers. But the core idea is of a girl known as Meenakshi growing in this tiny village called Vatgaon. It's a fictional village. I have made it near Kolhapur. So, Meenakshi, when she reaches her teenage, she starts growing rapidly. And she, although her age is less, she almost gets the characteristics of a full grown woman. And because of this, it is a male dominated society, patriarchal society. So the gaze of the males falls on her. And Meenakshi, who is essentially still young, cannot understand it. She cannot come to terms with it. But whenever she is assaulted or violated by the men of the society, there is something within her that rises. And that thing that rises, it takes the revenge or it brutalizes the man who perpetrates the crimes on her. This scenario is actually because Meenakshi is growing with the spirit of a Yakshini within her. So that is what the story is about. Meenakshi has the story of a Yakshini. The body of spirit of a Yakshini within her. So she has a dual nature. The nature of a woman who is growing up in a patriarchal society. So we are thinking about a weak, vulnerable kind of woman who probably does not have a lot of agency at her disposal. And then there is this other end where there is this Yakshini within her, and this Yakshini is prodding her and forcing her to do things like take revenge upon the men. But the story does not end there. That is not what the story is about. The story is about if a woman can fight back such kind of repression, then what is the fate of that woman in society? We have seen how a woman who speaks against injustice is labeled as a loose woman, bad woman, whatever. She is made, the victim is victimized.
Correct.
That is what happens in our society. And that is what is the subject matter of Yakshini, that if Yakshini fights back, or Meenakshi in this sense, Meenakshi fights back, then what does she have to face in the society that she is growing in, which is such a male dominated society?
Correct.
Do you know how the idea of this novel came in my mind? The idea of this novel came when I heard about the Nirbhaya rape case. Think that rape case which shook the whole of India. Like the way the criminals brutalized that girl on the bus in Delhi. We all know about it, gory details. In my mind, that story took a kind of place, a permanent place for many years. And also I was thinking that what if Nirbhaya had fought back? Suppose she had some supernatural power by which she could fight back. Then how would society look at her after that? A woman who fights men back. Because it is not an easy thing to imagine. So how would our society have taken that? We have this long tradition of women who exert their power or show their power in any way to be even labeled as witches and burnt at the stake. It's still happening in India. And this was something that became the core concept of Yakshini. Now, of course, the research was along the lines of knowing what the Yakshini is. I had to know that. So I read a lot of texts, mythological texts, folklore, wherever Yakshinis were mentioned. I came to know that there are 36 Yakshinis in the Hindu lore, Hindu mythology. And these Yakshinis are residents of a place known as Alkapuri. Now, Alkapuri is somewhere high on the Himalayas, according to legend. It is somewhere between heaven and earth. So, Alkapuri is a midland. And the ruler of Alkapuri is none other than Kuber. Kuber, who is the half brother of Ravan, the god of wealth.
Okay.
So, Kuber is the overseer, the overlord of this place, Alkapuri. Now, who stays in Alkapuri? The 36 Yakshinis. Then there are all the Daityas, who are not totally gods and not totally humans also, the demigods,
Okay.
as we say. So the Gandharvas are there. There are the Pishachas also staying in
Okay.
Alkapuri. So these are the residents of this place. And what happens? What is the Yakshini finally? The Yakshini, these 36 Yakshinis, they are worshipped by human beings, by Hindus. What is the purpose to worship? Every Yakshini is considered to be the holder of one boon.
One?
Boon, a blessing.
Okay.
Like one Yakshini might give you prosperity. One Yakshini might
Okay.
give you a happy married life. One Yakshini might give you a child. So there are specific Yakshinis for specific purposes. And according to that, a thing known as a Yakshini sadhana is done, a puja. So when a Yakshini sadhana is done, then the specific Yakshini is propitiated and you get that vardhan, that blessing. However, Yakshinis are temperamental. They are very moody. So sometimes the puja may backfire. And instead of giving you a blessing, they may even give you a curse if something goes wrong. So it's a very risky kind of thing. And this also became part of my story, all this research, because of course, since it's a story, it needs conflict.
Correct.
And what better conflict than something taken out of the mythology directly? So this is how the book Yakshini shaped up, which of course was received very well. And this is the kind of research that I do, and it's always fun to research. Why? Because you learn things that you don't know, and you are basically creating the story in your head as you go along.
Correct.
So when I am reading a text, I understand that okay, this is something that I will put in my story. But where will I put it? I'll have to make the story this way so that this can be included. So
Okay. So this is the
that's a
process you
fun
go
part of
through.
yeah. I believe research is quite fun.
It's very important, yeah. Like to give justice to any text,
Yes.
research is very important.
And horror writing is more about the details. So how many more details you put, how much characters you build up, how much you thicken the plot, that makes it a bit
To get the
yeah.
layered.
Because we do not have visual aids, we do not have auditory aids when
We
are writing
only
a
have
novel.
text.
So yeah, the details matter.
Yeah. So when you write these stories and when you go out on the research, like how do you write? Is there any place you go through, or is there any kind of room where you write, or
Yeah,
is
I
there?
basically travel when I have to write. I do not prefer writing in my home at my work desk. Because when you are writing a new story, I think it deserves a new place, a new environment, a new surroundings. So I basically book a hotel room or something like that in a different city, and that is where I sit down and I write my stories. So yeah, it's a fun experience to do that because I am basically isolated.
You shut yourself
Yes,
in a
I
room.
like completely cut myself off for those many days, and I work on my story and I come back with a new idea. So yes, even during these periods, because I am alone, a lot of things do happen, and they add to the entire atmosphere, flavor of my story.
Like paranormal activities.
What have you? Yes, yes. So uh, once I just
Can you
shared,
share some
I
to
just shared one of these episodes on my Instagram recently, but I'll repeat it for the sake of this podcast. So I was in Shimla a couple of years back. I think it was 2019. I was invited to the Shimla Literature Festival. And the whole plan was to have a horror talk, and on the Shimla Mall Road we would be in the church compound, and there we would be telling horror stories to an audience. Now what actually happened is on that particular day there was a lot of rainfall,
in
a
Shimla?
cloud burst actually. So it was like the heaven exploded on Shimla Mall Road.
Acha.
So it became very tough, and then the event was cancelled. It was delayed and then after
Hmm.
eventually cancelled.
Hmm.
So then I came back to my hotel room. I had booked the hotel for a longer period for 10 days because I also planned to write my novel there.
Hmm.
I was writing at that time a novel about a reincarnation story,
Okay,
Punarjanam.
Punarjanam.
So I wanted complete peace of mind for that, and I thought what better place than Shimla.
Correct.
Now I was writing in it was night or had already happened and it was very dark, dinner and all had happened. I was writing in the middle of the night. When I'm writing this story, my hands suddenly start trembling because I'm feeling something. And there's a kind of a cold setting in.
Hmm.
And this is not that normal cold that you'll feel in Shimla.
Hmm.
This cold is something that is going to the bone.
Hmm.
Like it's just piercing you, penetrating you. And try as I might, I'm not able to hold my hand steady.
Hmm.
Still, I'm writing. And I'm writing a very, very scary scene at this moment. A scene, a haunting scene. So I somehow went through that. Some more minutes passed. Then again, I feel as if something is watching me from the
Hmm.
corner. Now understand that I am in the hotel room all alone, completely cut off. And there was something in the corner watching me.
You felt that?
I totally felt that.
Hmm.
Like, how when somebody looks at you and you get that feeling that someone's
Hmm.
watching
Hmm.
you.
Hmm.
So I turned. The first time I turned, I saw nothing. It was just the blank wall.
Hmm.
Again, after a few minutes, I got that feeling. And this time I have gone still ahead on the scene.
Hmm.
And now I saw it. There was this wardrobe, that thing where you keep your suitcases, clothes, and all.
Hmm.
Next to the wardrobe, the wall was blank, but on the wall, I could make out a shadow. It was a kind of a grey shadow of a very tall figure. A shadow, how a shadow is.
Hmm.
There was no way that the shadow could be there because there was nothing in that room that could
Hmm.
cast that shadow. But I saw that black shadow. It was there, and even though it had no features,
Hmm.
I could make out that it is watching me, it is looking at me.
So is it because when you write these things, you gel up those energies within you,
Possibly.
those dark energies?
This is also what my paranormal investigator friends tell me
Hmm.
that when you are writing about this other side,
Hmm.
the other side comes to know about it. They come to know that you are invoking them because you are writing it by getting so deeply into the story.
Hmm.
So when I write horror, I do not write it superficially. I don't write it like it's a school time essay
Hmm.
just for marks. I actually become part of the story. It's so it has to be very inherent
Hmm.
in me. The story has I have to be in on the scene. So because I mentally travel to all these dark areas when I'm writing,
Hmm.
I think possibly I am bringing out something from there. And this experience which I told you has also happened to me in Chandigarh. In Chandigarh, when I was this same Shimla trip, I cut short
Hmm.
and I went to Chandigarh because I thought Shimla is. I could not write in Shimla after that night when I
Hmm.
saw that grey shadow. I just had to shut down my laptop and go off to bed. So then I went to Chandigarh. I mean Chandigarh because that's still a busy city, right? So it's.
Hmm.
I thought it's a better ambience. Again, that thing happened, but this time I did not see a grey shadow, but I saw the lights in the room begin to like dance, flicker. That was inexplicable because everywhere else the lights were on. I spoke to the reception area person who was already sleeping because it was some 1 or 2 in the night.
Hmm.
But that person told me ki lights are all okay, wiring we have just prepared and all. It's all new.
Hmm.
And when he came, the lights were okay. The moment he went and I went back to my laptop to write,
Started flickering.
the lights started flickering again. And this happened, it was not the normal electricity fluctuation that we can make out. That happens with a buzz sound. This was something like, like that kind of very rhythmic thing.
Okay.
So I knew that this is something very odd. Again, I got this quite a big fright. I just put my laptop off and then I uh, finished the story in Chandigarh. But I did not write in the nights.
Started
I,
writing
I
the day.
wrote it in the daytime. Similar incident again happened with me in Goa. Now in Goa, I had booked a hotel room again for another story. This was
Hmm.
it was somewhere a little bit off from Kalangut beach,
Hmm.
because I don't like very desolate areas also.
Hmm.
So I was near Kalangut beach. So my hotel room was a tiny room. I don't want a very big room. I cannot write in that very cozy environment. So I booked like mid-sized rooms which are
Hmm.
good for me. And I was writing again. And this time very odd things began to happen. Like the windows opened up, the curtains would fly, and things toppled over. Directly a glass of water just fell on my
Laptop.
yeah, the water spilled on my laptop and all, and it was all by itself. And I was writing in the middle of the night. And then in the next morning, when I went out to check like what is this and all, I went out for a stroll, and that was when I understood that just outside my hotel room where I had, there was this kind of mansion, Portuguese built mansion,
Hmm.
which was empty since the last 40 years. And it was believed that the people in it had died tragically, and therefore the mansion was afterwards kept empty always. And it was believed that that mansion was haunted by
Hmm.
those ghosts of those people. This is what happened with me in the
Goa.
hotel room. Yeah, and while writing Maya's new husband, this is the first time it was when this happened. And in Maya's new husband, there is this scene, for people who have read the book will know, that when Maya actually discovers the truth about her husband Bhaskar Sadachari, and she goes into that kind of abandoned garage to find out what it is about him. When she goes there, when all those body parts she starts discovering about the truth of her husband. That was the scene I was writing when suddenly a chill overcame me completely. This was my first experience of such vibes during my writing.
The
Yeah, because
energy.
Maya's New Husband is anyway my debut novel.
Hmm.
So I had this chill, and suddenly it was as if something is telling me, don't write, don't write, don't write. And it was so profound, I'll tell you. I had to just shut my laptop, my device, and go off to bed. I could not write that night. But yeah, that explanation really holds water for me, that when we are writing about all these energies, especially when you are
They
going so deep into it,
they start communicating around
yes,
you, no?
because after all, they are also, in a way, they are sensate, they understand what's going on.